Hello everyone, I hope all of you are doing good and I am back with the fourth video of the video series on Class 8 Science, Crop Production and Management. So in this video, our agenda is to learn about the irrigation methods. In fact, we will learn about why is irrigation important, the traditional methods of irrigation as well as the modern methods of irrigation. So let's start. So let us see what is irrigation. It is the artificial application of water to soil to ensure growth of agricultural crops. Okay, so now when we talk about irrigation, we mean the field needs water. Now you would have seen, maybe you would have seen in movies that the farmers wait for rainfall. So they pray God that okay, it should rain, only then we will be able to produce more crops. So why do they pray for rain? That's because their fields need water, and rainfall is a natural source of water. So the field gets wet naturally. But rainfall alone doesn't help. That's because we do not have rainy season throughout the year. Or maybe when we want to water the field, that time there is no rain, because even the seasons vary sometimes. Sometimes it starts raining little early, sometimes it starts raining little late. So that season also varies. So therefore came this concept of artificial application of water. So the farmers, they artificially apply water. They bring water by some means and then they spread it throughout the field. So this artificial application of water is called as irrigation. So just look at this picture, you'll be able to understand how fields are irrigated. So here you can see there are plants and they have been completely irrigated. A lot of water has been applied to them. Now again, different plants will have different water requirements. Some of them need a lot of water, some of them need a little lesser water. So again, that depends from plant to plant. But application of water is important because there is no such plant which can grow and survive without water. So even before we talk about how do we carry out irrigation in the fields, let us try to understand the importance of water, because irrigation is all about artificially applying water to the field. So now it is something like we don't even want to rely on the natural source of water, that is rainfall. We also want an additional source or an artificial source which is under our control, that whenever we want we can apply water to the field. So that means water must be very much important for plant growth. That is why we have kept this artificial method as well. So let us quickly look at the importance of water in plant growth. Water helps in germination of seeds. So when we put seeds on the soil or when we scatter the seeds, we want the seed to form a small seedling, and then that seedling will gradually grow into a plant. So this process of germination of seeds require water. It cannot happen without water. So under dry conditions, the seeds will also always remain as seeds and they will also get dried up. So formation of plants from seeds cannot happen without water. So that is one important place where water is required. Dissolved nutrients absorbed by the plants. Now the nutrients are all present in the soil. We apply manure to the soil, we apply fertilizer to the soil. So naturally also all the nutrients are present within the soil. So how do the plants get the nutrients from the soil? So those nutrients reach the plants through the roots. But how? The roots doesn't absorb gaseous nitrogen, right? So it absorbs the nutrients in dissolved form. So the nutrients are present inside the soil, dissolved in water. So water acts as a medium through which all the nutrients get transferred from the soil into the plant. So it acts as an important medium for transportation of nutrients. Needed for photosynthesis. Now this is needless to say how important is photosynthesis. This is the process in which plants prepare their own food in the form of glucose in presence of sunlight, and during this process it takes in carbon dioxide and water, and in presence of sunlight it produces food in the form of glucose, that is C6H12O6, and oxygen is released. So basically this food is prepared by utilizing water. So if there is no water, photosynthesis will not be able to take place. And if photosynthesis doesn't happen, the plants will not have food to eat. Then the plants will also not have energy and the plants will eventually die. So photosynthesis is a basic requirement for plants' survival. Also, the food which is being prepared, that is this glucose, it has to reach different parts of the plants because photosynthesis takes place in the leaves of the plant. But do you think it is only the leaves that need food? Each part of the plant requires food, whether it is the root or the stem or the branches, everywhere food has to reach. So how does it reach? It again reaches through water in dissolved form. So water acts as an excellent medium for transportation of nutrients as well as food in the form of glucose to different plant parts. Regulates temperature. So controlling the temperature, that is, it doesn't allow the plant to become very hot. So it controls the temperature and keeps the plant cool. It also protects the plant from hot air currents. So because if the temperature becomes too hot for a plant, then the plant might get dried up and dehydration can lead to the death of the plant. So that means it also controls the temperature within the plant. Now the question is, why is irrigation needed? Because irrigation is all about application of water, and we saw that water is extremely important for the survival of a plant. So agriculture is largely dependent on rains. Now, if we do not have an artificial system to supply water to the field, in that case we are completely dependent on rains. Then the farmers will not have any other choice other than praying God for giving rainfall. Now sometimes due to some or the other reason, because rainfall is dependent on so many factors, there could be so many climatic conditions because of which sometimes the rainfall might get delayed. So, and because of that, if we do not have an alternative to rainfall, in that case maybe the entire effort which had been put by the farmer prior to irrigation, that might get wasted, because you saw, right, that irrigation comes much later. Before that the soil needs to be prepared. Once the soil is prepared, it has to be followed by plowing. Once plowing and leveling, all that is done, it has to be followed by application of manures and fertilizers. So once all that is done, then comes irrigation. So just imagine the farmer puts in all the efforts, but when the time for irrigation comes in, there is no rain. So all his efforts will go waste. So also, if you look at the way rainfall happens in India, there is an irregular distribution of rainfall in India. So therefore, there are certain regions where there is heavy rainfall, which gets a lot of rainfall throughout the year. Whereas there are certain regions where there is very little rainfall. So that ways also it is difficult. If the agriculture is completely dependent on rain, then some of the locations might get rain timely, but some locations which will remain deprived of rains, but some other locations which do not get enough rain, their cultivation of crops will become a difficult job. So that is looking at these kind of constraints by keeping the agriculture entirely dependent on rainfall, came up the concept of irrigation, so that we are not entirely dependent on rainfall. Even if there is no rainfall, we can artificially apply water to the fields. Now the question is, how is irrigation done? How exactly do we water the field? Because the fields which we are talking about, they are huge fields. So if we want to water those fields, manually if we want to water those fields, it is again going to be a tedious job. However, there were methods, traditional methods of irrigation. Now these days have come up some modern methods of irrigation as well. So let us quickly have a look at them. So different types of irrigation methods are used depending on the different water resources, because there has to be some source of water. To water such a big field, we need enough water. There has to be some source from where we will fetch the water. So it could be wells, it could be canals, it could be river lift systems, or it could be tanks. Any of these could act as water resources, and they can be used as sources for irrigating a particular field. So let us now look at the irrigation methods. Now one of the common irrigation methods are wells. So wells, from where do they get water? They utilize the groundwater. So what are wells? They are nothing but a depression on the land which is dug deep inside. So it is dug so deep inside that it reaches the level of groundwater. So it extracts the groundwater, and water is lifted from the wells by pumps for irrigation. So we actually bring the groundwater, and then that water is applied to the fields. Now, how water is applied to the field? Now, there can be many different possibilities. One option is that maybe the farmers can manually carry the water and then apply it on the fields. So that it will involve a lot of time, that will be a slow process, and it will also involve a lot of labor. So as you can see here, so if this is the groundwater, so this is the well, so you have a lot of water here and a motor is fitted here. So this motor will bring the water up. Now once the water is brought here, and then there is a big reservoir. Reservoir is nothing but a storehouse. It is like a container which stores water. So whatever water comes out of this well, that is stored in this big reservoir, and from this reservoir it is then sent to the fields. Now it may be through pipes, or it may happen manually, or whatever way. So that is how the fields can be watered. So that is one way. That is one irrigation method. The next method could be the canals. So as you can see, these are the canals which can act as good source of water, and then the water from these canals can be used to irrigate the nearby field. Another could be the river lift systems, that is, water is drawn directly from rivers for irrigation in nearby areas. Like, it is just that the concept will remain the same, just that the well is replaced by a river. So instead of the well, you have the river, and the water is lifted using pumps which are fitted within the river lift systems, and then that water is used for watering the nearby fields. Another methods could be tanks. Tanks are artificial water reservoirs used for irrigation. So here you can see a big tank is there, so which contains a lot of water. So water coming out of it can be sent throughout the field using pipes. So these are some of the very common irrigation methods which were used even in the traditional days. Maybe in the traditional days when the lift systems or when the pump motor and all were not there. So in that case it was actually spread to the entire field manually. So these were some of the traditional irrigation methods. There are certain disadvantages associated with the traditional methods of irrigation. For example, too much of human labor is involved, because here we are not watering a small garden. We are talking about huge fields. So if we imagine that a person or a group of person they are trying to irrigate the entire field, even that involves too much of human labor, which is not worth it. It is less efficient, because in this case it depends on the human being. So maybe some part of the field gets more water, some part of the field gets less water, because it is not something which has been automated. It depends on human beings. Now sometimes it might also happen that some part of the field was missed getting water. So that means also the process of applying water to the field is less efficient. Wastage of water, because we will not know exactly how much water needs to be provided to the field. Maybe some places we will put some extra water, or maybe while carrying the water from one place to another, some of the water will just fall off and will get wasted. So that means also a lot of wastage will be involved. So as you can see in this picture, so this person is bringing the water out of this well, and then he is actually manually irrigating the field. So because of these advantages came up the modern methods of irrigation. So what are these modern methods of irrigation? Now mostly there are two methods which are being used, that is sprinkler system and drip system. So now we are going to discuss about these two types of systems in detail to understand how these modern methods are able to overcome the disadvantages that were associated with the traditional methods of irrigation. So first we will discuss about the sprinkler system, and then we will take up the drip system. So sprinkler system, the name says sprinkler. It comes from the word sprinkle. So you would have often heard sprinkle water. That means spraying water, spraying small amount of water all around. So as you can see in this picture, this is how water gets sprinkled in this type of system. You see, this is your entire field, and here you see these white dots. They represent the water coming out of these small pipe-like structures. So the water gets sprinkled out, and these have been established at a particular distance from each other. So let us see, what is this? So here water flows out from rotating nozzles of pipes. So here you see you have, these are the rotating nozzles. So it actually keeps on rotating, and as it rotates, the water coming out of it will also rotate. So basically, wherever the pipe is located, let us suppose the pipe is located here. So considering that as the center, so all the area surrounding it will receive the water because the nozzle is actually rotating. So this is actually moving, rotating like this. Therefore, the water which is being thrown, that is also getting thrown in that entire circle, right? So that is how the sprinkler system works. So here what happens exactly is, there are perpendicular pipes with rotating nozzles on top. So these are the perpendicular pipes, and if you see, they are all located at specific distances, and these nozzles are rotating. That is, they move in a circular path. Now such pipes are joined to the main pipeline. So let us see how exactly it works. Now let us imagine that this is the well, and inside the well you have a motor. So here maybe you have a motor here, and therefore the water is being brought up. Now once the water is being brought up, and then this water is supplied to this main pipeline. So let us say this water is being brought to the main pipeline. Now from this main pipeline, you actually have many perpendicular pipes, something like this. There are so many perpendicular pipes which are connected to the main pipeline. So if this is your main pipeline, so these are the perpendicular pipelines. So all of them will receive water from this main pipeline. Now on each of these perpendicular pipelines, you have these rotating nozzles located like this. So these are the rotating nozzles which are situated here. Now from these rotating nozzles comes up the water like this. Right? So maybe the picture which I have drawn is little in a different orientation. So if you look at it in the correct orientation, I think in that case I should have drawn it otherwise. So I should have drawn it something like this. Let us suppose if this is your main pipeline, and these are the perpendicular pipelines, and on these perpendicular pipelines you have the rotating nozzles located like this, and from here comes the water. Like here you can see, so these are the rotating nozzles and these are the perpendicular pipelines, and these perpendicular pipelines are connected to the main pipeline. So let us suppose this is again a perpendicular pipeline connected to the main pipeline. This is another one connected to the main pipeline, and this main pipeline gets water directly from the well. So what happens is, all these pipes are joined to the main pipeline at specific interval. So you see, at specific interval, the perpendicular pipelines are connected to the main pipeline. So water will flow through the main pipe under a pressure that is created due to this pump. So the pump will create a pressure because of which water will flow through the main pipe. And how the water escapes out? It escapes out through the rotating nozzles, and that is how the entire field will get water. And in this case, no human labor is involved because nobody has to roam around the field to supply water. The time is also less because it doesn't take much time for the water to travel through the main pipeline. So it will happen within fraction of seconds. So the entire field will get water at the same time. Also, there will be efficient distribution of water because whatever water is flowing out of these nozzles, same amount of water will flow out of all the rotating nozzles. That means every part of the field will receive uniform amount of water. At the same time, there is no wastage of water because as long as it is required to irrigate, we will irrigate it. When we think that, okay, we do not want any more water, you can just switch off the pump. So in that case, there will be no water flowing into the main pipeline, and therefore there will be no irrigation taking place, and hence there will be no water wastage. So in this case, this type of system is extremely useful for uneven land with insufficient water because there is no wastage of water involved there. So that is also, it is extremely useful for the areas where there is lack of water. So I hope you understood how the sprinkler system works. So here, if you look at this picture, this just gives you the idea how the main pipeline and the perpendicular pipelines are connected. So here you can understand this is the main pipeline and these are the perpendicular pipelines. Right? Okay. Now let us look at the second system, that is the drip system. Drip system, what happens? Instead of water sprinkling out, here drops of water will be provided near the roots. Just at the roots, drop of water will be provided. So it is all the more trying to save more water. So drip system is more efficient for areas which completely have very limited water supply. So here water falls drop wise near the roots. That is why it is called drip system. Drip is related to drops. So here, if this is the well, so from the well again water will come to the main line. So this is the main line. Now from this main line there is another sub main line. So this was the main line, this is the sub main line, and from this sub main line you have the perpendicular pipelines. Right, so these are the perpendicular pipelines, and here everywhere you see it is connected where drops of water will come out. So drops of water come out only near the root part. So just look at this portion. So this portion is wet, only this portion of the soil is wet. So it is just going to provide water drop wise, not even like the previous sprinkler system. The water will not flow out in the form of sprinkles. Just drop wise some water will ooze out from these openings, and it will fall only near the area of the root. So this system is extremely useful because there is absolutely no wastage of water. In fact, there is no wastage of water, and there is not much supply of water also. So this is going to be extremely useful for those areas where there is insufficient water. So good for areas with less water. So that means you can see that both these sprinkler system and drip system, both of them, both of these methods aim to save water. At the same time, it saves human effort as well as time. So these were some of the modern methods of irrigation. But by now you would have understood that irrigation is extremely important, because without supplying water, all the efforts which have been put before irrigation will go waste. Therefore, it is very important that the field is irrigated on time, either by natural rainfall or by artificial application of water. So now that we have discussed the modern methods of irrigation, so let us see if it could overcome the disadvantages associated with the traditional methods of irrigation. So these modern methods of irrigation, no human labor involved, whereas in traditional methods, human labor was involved, either in the form of human beings or in the form of cattle or animals. So even though human labor or cattle is cheaper, at least in India, but it is quite less efficient. Here, no wastage of water in drip system or sprinkler system, but in the manual methods or the traditional methods, a lot of water get wasted. More efficient method, because here water is being supplied evenly throughout the field. Also, water is being supplied only when it is required. So that means proper utilization of the water takes place. But that is not the case for traditional method. So now, it is actually very useful, and our little friend agrees to it, and he says that yes, absolutely, the modern methods of irrigation, even though it will be little expensive than the traditional methods, because it involves the usage of pump and the setup of the entire system, either for drip system or sprinkler system, but in the long run it is a lot more useful than the traditional methods of irrigation. Now, how do we ensure the water availability needed for irrigation? Because now we talked about so many different methods of irrigation, both traditional as well as modern methods. But for all of them, we need a source of water. Now, what would happen if you want to irrigate a field, but the nearby river is dried up, there is no water in the river, or if there is no water in the nearby well? Because you need a source of water. If there is no water, how will you be able to irrigate? Correct? So how do we ensure that water is always available for irrigation? Because just now we talked about the wells or the rivers or the canals, but all of them should have water. We need to make sure that water is always there. So irrespective of the weather conditions, what we can do is we can harvest the rainwater. So whenever it rained, because we don't know when we want to irrigate the land, so what we can do is whenever it rained, we can utilize the rainwater and we can store the rainwater so that it can be used whenever required. So rainwater harvesting is accumulation of rainwater for reuse, that is storage of rainwater so that it can be used later. So whenever we need it, maybe let us suppose it rained now, but I want the farmer wants to irrigate the land next month, and next month it is not raining. So now you will say that okay, I will artificially irrigate. I will irrigate my field, but for that you need water, correct? Now let us suppose by some chance the nearby well has dried up, so you don't have water at all. So even if you use drip system, you need at least water. Without water you can't do it. You utilize less water, but you need water for that. So what will you do then? So for that purpose, it is always advisable to store the rainwater so that it can be utilized later, so that you never arrive at a situation where there is no water at all. So rainwater harvesting is something which is in fact very common these days, because we do not want to waste water. So whatever water we are getting in the form of rain, we want to make use of it. If not at that time, sometime later. So this is how a rainwater harvesting system look like. So you can see the rainwater, this is let us suppose this is a building or a house or whatever. So this is how the rainwater comes in, and this is a rainwater storage where the entire water gets stored, and then there are a couple of filters which will filter the rainwater, and then finally there will be a pump which will take it up to a tank. So here this water, when the water is completely filtered and it is absolutely stored at a particular place, in that case the water can be utilized anytime later whenever required. So that concept is called rainwater harvesting.
I hope you found the video useful. If you have any feedback, any suggestions, do let us know in the comment section. And if you liked the video, share it with your friends as well. In the next video, we are going to learn about weed control, harvesting and storage. So be with us.